Now, the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNradio.com.
Something has happened in free agency that's really pretty amazing when you stop and consider it. And that is, free agency has officially become recruiting. I mean, like college football recruiting. And when I say it's officially become like college football recruiting, I mean it's getting crazy. And by crazy, I'm talking about the DeAndre Jordan situation. Now, look, here's what apparently happened with DeAndre Jordan. He agreed that he would go to the Mavericks at some point. Now, okay, another detail, important to note. All these deals that were agreed to and people said that they were going to sign, they're going to sign them, but they have not been signed. Like, there is a moratorium on these things. You cannot sign until the NBA's accountants have figured out what the cap line is going to be, what the tax line is going to be, all that stuff, because then you got to put those figures into the contract, right? So you have this time period. DeAndre agreed that he would go to the Mavericks. Somewhere along the way, he decided, I don't know about that. And the way this went was DeAndre Jordan, this according to Ramona Shelburne of ESPN, DeAndre Jordan reached out to Blake Griffin and Doc Rivers and said he was having second thoughts. And the Clippers, you know, they look like they're about to be sorry. They were like, hey, well, if you want to talk, we can talk. And so they talked to DeAndre Jordan. Next thing you know, the Clippers bring in all the big guns. They bring in Steve Ballmer, you know, the billionaire owner. Because here's the thing. DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin are best friends. Blake Griffin says that DeAndre wants to come back, or DeAndre talks to him about it. DeAndre's going to tell him what the situation is. Blake Griffin doesn't want to be on a sorry team and doesn't want to get hollered at by Chris Paul by himself. I imagine he goes to the owners and is like, look, man, this is what he's talking about. I think there's room for us to do this. I think we can figure it out, right? So the Clippers go to meet with DeAndre Jordan. Now, at midnight or 12:01 Thursday, people can sign contracts. All right? On Thursday, people can sign contracts. So the Clippers have gone. They've sent everybody down there. Apparently, Chris Paul has been one of the strongest people pushing to keep DeAndre Jordan because Chris Paul don't want to be sorry either. Like, the thing I can imagine with Chris Paul is, as much as he might scream at DeAndre Jordan, he's just like, that's just how I am. That's just what I do. Right? So now everybody's in there with DeAndre Jordan, and basically the Clippers have got to ride this thing out until midnight because Mark Cuban's coming down, and Mark Cuban is trying to meet with DeAndre Jordan because they want him to come back around, and apparently DeAndre Jordan told him that he would get a sit-down before he made a decision. The Clippers have nothing to gain from DeAndre Jordan honoring that deal. So Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo Sports 17 minutes ago said the Clippers have been able to keep everyone else out of the house, including Cuban agents, everyone. They're in four corners until midnight Eastern. I mean, it almost sounds like DeAndre Jordan is being held hostage. Now, you guys who follow let's do that one more time. You guys who follow college football closely, you see why that was difficult. You guys who follow college football closely, you know the stories of the coaches picking a recruit up the night before signing day and taking him out of town to stay in a hotel and then getting him to sign the letter of intent. You know the stories of people like parents hiding letters of intent so their kids can't sign them and everything else. Like, when it gets down to the deadline, man, the stakes get high. When the stakes get high, people start doing wild stuff. I can't think of a situation where a grown man was being surrounded by other grown men to make sure he could sign the contract. Yeah. And let me tell you something, too. If I'm Mark Cuban, there's no way in hell I'm trying to get into that house. There's not. There's no way in the world that I'm trying to get into that house. Look, man, we made our pitch. We made a deal. We're not about to negotiate with you again. Like, it's not going down. And please understand something, right? Like, I don't want to get into too many details because I'm not about telling business in front of the world. But I can tell you, I have been in one of those situations where you agree to a contract, but you haven't signed the contract. And before you sign the contract, you realize that maybe signing this contract isn't the best idea. And so you call your people and tell them to call some people. And then next thing you know, you working somewhere else. Sometimes people have just got to be mad. Right? So if DeAndre Jordan makes this deal with the Mavericks and he decides he wants to stay with the Clippers, hey, man, that's what you got to do. If it comes down to the 5th year or whatever it is, sometimes that's just the thing that you have to do and people have to be mad. For example, let me make sure I get the numbers exactly right about what happened that time that Carlos Boozer got that blind man for all that money. You remember that? So, okay, some of you guys may not remember this, but Carlos Boozer once upon a time played with the Cleveland Cavaliers, like with LeBron James on the same team. And Boozer was a second-round pick. He was not making very much money, relative to NBA standards, of course. So somehow he wound up making him a deal with, we believe he had made a deal with the Cavs, that the Cavs would let him out of his contract 1 year early, and they would sign him to a 6-year contract for $39 million, as opposed to what was going to happen otherwise, which was he'd basically stick around for $695,000. Like, the Cavs had just made a deal. Like, we're going to do you this kind of sort of solid, not really solid, but kind of sort of solid, and give you this 6-year deal for $39 million. So Boozer said, okay, and they let him out of his deal. And while he was out of that deal, the Utah Jazz called Boozer, and they offered him a 6-year contract for $70 million. Now, I don't know about you guys, all right, but we're talking about $31 million. I don't know how mad y'all could be with me where I'm really getting caught up and bothered by that fact when I'm taking home an extra $31 million. Okay? You could call me a snake. You can call me a cheat. You can call me whatever you want. But you're just going to have to be mad about it this time. I'm sorry. We're not talking about $31,000. We're talking about $31 million over a 6-year contract. Nah, bro, I'm going to take that 70 and y'all are going to be mad. And I'm just saying, sometimes it works out that way. Like, you can't, one thing I have learned in my short time of doing business, you cannot sign any contract unless you're happy with it. Because you're stuck with it. Like, once you're there, no matter what happens, if right before you sign that contract you realize that you're not going to be happy with it, you can't do it because you're going to be miserable the whole way. Like, it's bad enough that you're doing something you're not so concerned with, but not so wild about, but the second anything goes bad, man, you're going to be mad at yourself because you knew you weren't going to like it in the first place, and then you're stuck. Like, you can't do that. So DeAndre Jordan, I get it if he wants to flip it around. I don't get why Mark Cuban, I mean, I get there's a certain level of desperation, but if I'm Mark Cuban, I'm already putting together my offer for Enes Kanter. Like, I'm not going to negotiate with you again. I mean, I don't blame Mark Cuban if he's mad at DeAndre Jordan. I'm not. Like, I get it on all sides. But I'd be damned if I'm trying to break up into your house so I can come beg you to take my money. Are you kidding me? You said you were coming. You know what we got over here, and you know why you trying to leave over there. In fact, that's just what I would tell him. Like, look, man, you know why you wanted to come here? You know why you wanted to leave there. Ain't none of that change. But I'm not about to be sitting outside his window, throwing rocks, screaming, trying to get him to let me in. Out there sounding like Lenny Williams. I'll be damned.
Bomani.
Talking about the DeAndre Jordan situation going on at his house. And look, I've said this. If I'm Mark Cuban, I'm not coming to negotiate with you again. I'm not. Like, the best I'd give DeAndre Jordan is a hell of a guilt trip. Like, look, man, you got to do what you got to do, but if you're the sort of dude that makes deals and then decides you want to back off of them, man, it's not my place to tell you how to live, right? Hey, some people just get down like that. And if you're one of those guys, who am I to tell you that you shouldn't be a better man? Right? Who am I to tell you should be a better man? Who am I? Who am I? Yeah, just go ahead and be the dude you are. You know what I'm saying? You go ahead and be that guy. And hey, look, if that's the guy you want to be, that's fine. Do that. But I'm not negotiating with you again. We made a deal. I'm not begging with you over again. It's you basically just asked me after I hit the showers to come out here and play extra innings. It ain't happening. 888-729-3776. Talk to Daniel in Alabama. Daniel, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, Bomani, how's it going?
Doing all right, man. How are you?
Good. Now, you got this Mark Cuban situation all wrong. See, I'm not going to let pride mess around and let me mess up on a 6'11" freak like DeAndre Jordan. I'm coming back for a second meeting, a third meeting, a ninth meeting. I'm trying to get in the house any way I can. I'll throw a brick through the window if I really have to, because there's no way I'm going to end up looking like the Portland Trailblazers next year or the Memphis Grizzlies without Pau Gasol.
Now, I understand what you're saying, but to me, it's not really a matter of pride. There's nothing else for you to tell him. Like, at this point, you're going in with zero leverage. And I appreciate the call, but nah, man, you're going to go ahead and make the decision. Now, you made a very interesting point where you said you're throwing a brick through the window if you have to. I got to know some more about how it is that they're keeping people out of DeAndre Jordan's house. Like, I just want to know. Because maybe you could get close enough to throw a brick. Do they have, like, the perimeter surrounded? Like, do the Clippers have a bunch of dudes standing guard at every turn? How are you keeping people out of this grown man's house? You guys got anything on that? Because I don't really have a great deal of information on how that's being carried out. Like, yeah, they're not letting DeAndre Jordan out or whatever it is. They're not letting anybody in. DeAndre Jordan is a grown man. How are you not letting somebody in your house? You told the Mavericks you wanted to talk to them? Hey, I'm about to let them in and talk. Like, how does that not, how, I don't understand that part. How are you not being allowed to let people in to your house? Now, there's a grand irony to this, right? The grand irony is that DeAndre Jordan, it sounds like he got tired of being treated like little brother with the Clippers. He got tired of them not calling any plays for him. He got tired of Chris Paul hollering at him, screaming at him, pointing his fingers at him, not giving him dap when he came into the huddles. Like, he got tired of being that dude. And what are they doing to you right now? You're a grown man in your own house, and they won't let you talk to people that you made appointments with. Like, they're saying your agent can't get in. That's what Adrian Wojnarowski said. They have kept your agent out. You pay that man how much money? How much? And you can't get them into your own house. Once again, for Adrian Wojnarowski, so far, Clippers able to keep everyone else out of house, including Cuban agents. Everyone. They're in four corners until midnight Eastern. How is somebody running four corners on you in your house when you have the ball? Seriously, how is that happening? Because I guarantee you, if that's whatever technique they're using, my man Mark Cuban probably at some point was thinking like my man was thinking right there. We just gonna throw a brick through the window, and then we just gonna come in. And then everybody looks around and remembers, oh yeah, that's right. We're in Texas. And I don't know who all's in that house with DeAndre Jordan, but I am from Houston. I grew up in Houston. I believe DeAndre's from the north side. I'm from the north side, and I'm telling you right now, somebody in there is, shall we say, prepared for intruders. You know what I'm saying? As the great philosopher Antoine Patton, big boy, would say, security system number 2 is in full effect. You guys, if you can't get in the house, I think you might want to be real calm and patient about it. I still say, though, DeAndre Jordan, adult, how are you not being allowed to let people in to your house? Like, look, if you want to sign with the Clippers, go ahead and tell the Clippers that you want to sign with them and let Mark Cuban and all those people go home. Seriously, if that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it, right? What I want to know, though, is if Mark Cuban can't get in that house and DeAndre Jordan's agent can't get in that house, and let me look this up as we speak to make sure I get this right, because I am pretty sure that DeAndre Jordan's agent is a gentleman named Dan Fagan. Or is it Fagan? I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but I'll tell you this. DeAndre Jordan and, Dan Fagan and Mark Cuban, they're kind of friends. They're kind of cool. Chandler Parsons, same agent. Okay? If neither one of them can get into the house, to talk to DeAndre Jordan? Ooh-wee. Can you imagine the conversation they're having right now? Can you imagine the things that Mark Cuban is saying to Dan Fagan right now? Because, look, let's keep this real. DeAndre Jordan had that meeting with Mark Cuban and everybody else, and they said all that stuff out. But who's Mark Cuban been talking about this with? Dan Fagan. That's who he's been having these conversations with, is Dan Fagan. Can you imagine if there were a circumstance under which Dan Fagan said something like, "Don't worry, Mark, you got this one." Right? "Don't worry, Mark. We're going to make this happen." Because, look, your agent always has an idea of what he thinks is best. Always. Look, I've got an agent. Talk to anybody who's got an agent. You got the things you want, but your agent also, you have him in place, in part, to give you a voice on things that you don't necessarily have, right? So when you're trying to figure these things out, your agent, it is hard for your agent to not be a human and have these moments where he's kind of going to nudge you in a certain direction, right? Like, your agent doesn't want to have to be the one to make the call. Even your agent isn't cool with Mark Cuban. Your agent doesn't want to have to be the one, if you're DeAndre Jordan, to make the call to the owner that you've agreed on a deal with to say, okay, this isn't happening. When Carlos Boozer got that blind man, remember that? When Carlos Boozer got that blind man and got out of that deal, his agent turned down the commission because his agent had a larger business concern. Like, look, I don't want to be associated with what happened here because I got other clients that I have to represent. This is going to mess me up down the line. So even if Fagan and Mark Cuban weren't cool, Dan Fagan is out here like, man, it's a bad look for me, except for the fact that Dan Fagan isn't the one in charge. DeAndre Jordan is the one who's in charge. DeAndre Jordan is the one who writes a check. So what is going on where DeAndre Jordan is in there with the Clippers and his agent is outside and his agent's buddy is the owner of the team that he agreed to a deal with that he's now trying to get out of, and the Clippers are so paranoid that they are running four corners on the man in his own house? Stop and think about everything that is going on in this situation, because this is how crazy business gets in these things, man. DeAndre Jordan negotiates a contract once every 4 or 5 years. His agent negotiates contracts every day. And so his agent got a completely different game that he's got to play. And right now, nobody trusts DeAndre Jordan enough to make up his own mind, and he's a grown man.
Bomani.
All guests join us on the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. Like our next guest, he covers the NBA for ESPN at ESPN.com. You can also see him on Around the Horn. His name is J.A. Adande. J.A., what's going on?
What's going on, Bo? It's the best day in NBA free agent history. I can't think of a better day. Between the drama with DeAndre Jordan, the emoji fest that broke out all over Twitter, name me a more entertaining day in which really nothing has transpired yet. You know, we haven't had any action, so to speak, no real transactions to report yet, and it's still been a fantastic day of news on Twitter.
Well, look, here's the thing. We have seen guys renege on free agent deals before. Like, that wouldn't be something new. Have you ever had a situation where a team was camped out with a player, either A, holding him hostage, or B, just keeping him company because he's afraid to talk to the other team?
Well, you know, Paul Cole reminded me of this, and I was actually thinking of it earlier today. Paul Cole covers the Phoenix Suns. So when Antonio McDyess was on the Suns, he went up to Denver, and he was in there, and he was going to sign with the Nuggets. He started having second thoughts. And a contingent of Phoenix Suns led by Jason Kidd with Rex Chapman and George McCloud was there. And they came up to Denver where McDyess was meeting with the Nuggets, and the Nuggets wouldn't let him inside, wouldn't let any of them inside McNichols Arena at the time where they played. And they were standing outside, and it was a snowstorm. I don't know if it was a lockout year or what, but it was snowing during the free agency period, and they basically kept them outside while, you know, they locked up Antonio McDyess, and that's how Antonio McDyess became a member of the Denver Nuggets. So we've seen sieges and freeze-outs and hostage situations, whatever you want to call it. We've seen this before. So actually none of this is unprecedented. What's unprecedented is the emoji fest that broke out all over Twitter. That we've never seen before in the NBA.
We're talking to J.A. Adande, who is dedicated to talking about this emoji fest. Like, this is, I feel like that when you got on this call, you were like, I am going to redirect this to the emoji fest, no matter what.
How can you avoid it? I mean, when you've got player after player tweeting out various transportation-related emojis, and then you've got teams jumping in, you've got the Brand Jordan account jumping in, you got even old Kobe had to come in and remind everybody that he's got 5 championships because he wasn't going to let this pass without weighing in. It's just the level of absurdity, and that's what I love about it. Harmless absurdity, and that's the NBA at its best.
Well, the Kobe one I think is great because everybody's on here joking and having a good time. And Kobe's that guy. What guy? That guy who comes in. We're like, no, we ain't even talking about that right now.
Well, the Warriors took it there. The Warriors were the ones that just said, oh, championship trophy. And, there really needs to be an official Larry O'Brien trophy because the trophy that's used in these emojis is so corny looking. It looks like something you get in third grade science fair or something. But that's the best they got. So, the Warriors kind of started. But then the Jordan account, not Michael Jordan's account, but the Air Jordan account for his brand, they tweeted out the 6 championships. And then Scottie Pippen joins in and says, yeah, you said it. Of course, because Scottie's like, hey, don't forget, I got all 6 of those rings, too. Everyone that Michael has, I have, too. And then the Jordan account just tweeted out a GOAT. I thought that was the best one of the day. He just tweeted out an emoji of a GOAT.
I love the fact that the Jordan brand account is basically like, what would petty Michael Jordan do if he were here right now? And that's exactly what petty Michael Jordan would have done. Like, that's it. We're talking to J.A. Adande. So tell me what you think about this. The interesting subtext about the DeAndre Jordan situation is that his agent and Mark Cuban may be closer than DeAndre Jordan is to his own agent.
That's the interesting thing, and who made the decision, and was DeAndre being shepherded to Dallas? Here's what kind of stood out to me was very early in the process, I was told by someone that DeAndre was really struggling with this, and he felt a lot of pressure, and it was weighing on him. And to me, that indicated that he was going to stay with the Clippers because my rule of thumb, whenever I've had to make a important life decision or, decide between jobs and moving, is if it's a hard decision, you stay. If it's an easy decision, go. They got to make it so easy. The money's got to be so much better. The situation, the promotion has to be so much higher that it's got to be an obvious choice when you go. And if it's hard at all, if you're weighing it and going back and forth, that means you've got a good situation where you are and you should stay. That's my little bit of career advice to the younger folks listening out there. And so I really think that came into play with DeAndre Jordan, and that it was difficult for him to leave at first. Even when he reached an agreement with Dallas, did you see him sending out those celebratory pictures on Twitter like you saw from other guys? DeMar Carroll, for example. We've seen it kind of in the trend. Anthony Davis did it first. You see the picture of them with the agents and the representatives from the team, and everybody looks all happy and smiling. You didn't see that with DeAndre Jordan. So it was kind of indicative that, he even when he said yes to Dallas, his heart wasn't completely in it. And if you don't feel comfortable, if it's not easy, then it means you should probably stay.
All right, we're talking to J.A. Adande, and wouldn't you think that this would also give him a decent measure of leverage with the Clippers? Because there are reasons why he left. Like, no matter what the ultimate pressure was, there seemed to be some legitimate reasons why he left that team. Does this mean now that the Clippers might want to do something about those things and maybe call a play for the big fella?
I think you saw that. I think, Chris Paul had the chance to make amends, coming off the banana boat with Bron and Melo and D-Wade and coming into Houston and telling him. That's the other part of the last 24 hours in the NBA, the pictures coming out of the vacation with those guys. The absurdity level is at an all-time high. But, clearly he was motivated to come off the banana boat and come make amends with DeAndre Jordan. And, one version I heard is that Chris Paul has said, I didn't realize it was that bad. I don't know how he couldn't realize that because it was pretty obvious to anybody watching, with DeAndre Jordan's body language. But, so maybe this was the moment that they needed, and maybe this can bring them together because you saw this unity. My other thought, too, was that Steve Ballmer had to be behind this. When you spend $2 billion on a franchise and when you live the type of life that Steve Ballmer has had and had the type of power that he's had, you got to go to Doc Rivers and say, wait a minute, I just spent $2 billion on this to be losing out to the Dallas Mavericks and to have the value of my asset downgraded. So I'm not taking no for an answer, and neither should you.
Let me tell you this. You know how Chris Paul didn't know his dad with DeAndre Jordan, because Chris Paul is just like that all the time. Like, if bad body language with Chris Paul fussing at people made him realize something, he need to stop fussing at people a long time ago.
Well, or he need to have a free agent try to leave him like this.
You might be right.
You know,
That'll be the most interesting
part. It takes that
part.
slap in the face.
And now Blake is probably going to pop up on the side, and while we talking about it, I'm a little tired of this stuff too. Like, now's the time for an intervention with Chris Paul. Like, everybody would have come talk to Chris Paul. Like, hey, man, I'm not even going to lie to you, man, but that time you put your finger in my face in practice, I was going to kill you.
Well, you know what? They still got another 2.5 hours to go before the sign-in, so if they're all just going to camp out and have this freeze out, I imagine these things are going to come up. What else are you going to talk about between now and then? So this could be a very therapeutic session for the Clippers. Maybe a turning point in Clipper history.
Chris Paul better not mess around and Kobe this situation and get up there and look at him and like, when I think of you, you remind me a lot of Omer Asik. Yeah, that's who I see when I see you.
You can be the Omer Asik like I had back in. I don't think it's going to go down like that.
All right, J.A. Adade, ESPN, ESPN.com. But, man, I appreciate you joining us.
You got it, man. Best day in NBA free agent history.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Bomani.
You guys seen that picture of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Paul on that banana boat? Y'all saw that? You see the other picture there from down in the Bahamas where everybody's just kicking it, and it's LeBron James, it's Chris Paul, it's Dwayne Wade, and it's Melo, and they're doing a toast, and it was a very interesting picture because everybody has on white T-shirts of some variety in the picture except for Chris Paul, who has on a Chris Paul T-shirt. Yeah, that's a little different. That's a little interesting. And I saw the pictures. It's just kind of what it is. Those guys hang out in the Bahamas, good for them. But it got me to thinking, can you imagine if Michael Jordan was on that trip? Seriously, can you imagine if Michael Jordan was on vacation with Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul, knowing that Carmelo Anthony has been out of the first round of the playoffs twice in his career and that Chris Paul has never been out of the second round of the playoffs? Like, just imagine that for a second. Because, see, the thing about Michael Jordan, I am fascinated by the idea and the construction of Michael Jordan. Like, everybody wants to be like Michael Jordan in some sort of way. Those of you who did not grow up in a Be Like Mike generation, I'm not sure that you're able to get it. But I hear people who make the argument that if Michael Jordan had been Michael Jordan in the era of social media, he had never gotten as big as he is. And I disagree with that because there's something about Michael Jordan that makes people want to be around him, makes people want to be near him. Like, they want to be Michael Jordan. Like when the Be Like Mike commercials are coming out, people wanted to be like Mike. And so you hear all these different stories of all these different people hanging out with Michael Jordan. All of this in spite of the fact that we all know, if I may paraphrase Marv Levy, that Michael Jordan is an orificious jerk. Y'all heard his story with my man Chameleon there, right? If you haven't, go ahead and Google it. Like, I can vouch for what a Michael Jordan fan Chameleon there is. I used to know the dude back in the day. Michael Jordan cracked his face in front of everybody. Everybody. Because that's what Michael Jordan does. And yet and still, like, everybody still wants to hang out with Michael Jordan. Ask people their stories about that one time when they met Michael Jordan. it's never like really pleasant. It's not necessarily unpleasant, almost always memorable, right? But it often involves people wanting to punch Michael Jordan in the face. Yet and still people want to hang out with Michael Jordan. Now, I bring that up because if Michael Jordan invited those cats to go hang out with him in the Bahamas. So you imagine it for a second. It's Michael Jordan, it's Chris Paul, and it's Carmelo Anthony on a banana boat, right? Or let's change this up, right? Let's imagine it's Michael Jordan on the boat, Scottie Pippen takes the trip with him, and they on the banana boat with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul is in the middle. Scottie going to try to row that banana boat. Mike's going to be like, no, your arms are too tired for playing in those NBA finals. Let a little man do it. Michael Jordan ain't rowing nothing. Chris Paul doing all the work. Chris Paul paying for everything. Oh, come on there, man. You know, the champion never has to pay. Like the fact that LeBron, there are all types of moments where people start pointing out, well, LeBron will never be Michael Jordan because da-da-da. Now, there are a lot of ways, good and bad, that LeBron is not like Michael Jordan. Like, LeBron seems to be about some things that are a bit larger than LeBron, where Michael Jordan is entirely in this for Michael Jordan. For better or worse, no matter what you think of him, Michael Jordan is in this for Michael Jordan. But LeBron can hang out with Chris Paul and Melo and not have them feeling all insecure about themselves simply by being around. Michael Jordan would have taught Melo into the ground on that trip. Them dudes would have had no desire to be on that banana boat. None whatsoever. So Mike be like, oh, but you going to be a punk and get off the boat? All right, Mike, let me row the banana boat. Like, it's three people. Let me tell you something else I did notice about that picture of them cats on that banana boat, too. It was Gabrielle Union in the front, and then you had Dwayne Wade sitting in between Chris Paul and Gabrielle Union because, you know, never be too safe. And then LeBron was in the back. I guarantee you, anywhere they went, man, if anybody was sitting three on a row, Michael Jordan would have Chris Paul sitting in the middle. And you know exactly what Michael Jordan would call that seat in the middle. It would not be the no championship seat. That's not what he would call it, but that is effectively what it would become. Whoa. Wait a minute. Sorry, guys. Didn't want to change gears so rapidly on you, but why did Blake Griffin put a picture on Twitter? Apparently he's at DeAndre Jordan's house, and it's a picture of DeAndre Jordan's front door. And you know how people set a chair under the doorknob and cock it at that angle to stop somebody from being able to push the door open? That's what Blake Griffin just put on Twitter about the DeAndre Jordan situation. FYI, the door is glass. So, like, if they just want to break the glass and reach around it, it wouldn't be a preventative measure. Yeah. Anyway, yes, we are now at that point in the DeAndre Jordan situation. But back to Michael Jordan for a second, very briefly. Would you want to go on vacation with Michael Jordan? Like, serious question. Think about this to yourself. If you had an opportunity to go to the islands with Michael Jordan, would you want to go to the islands with Michael Jordan? Like, I think everybody has this idea in their mind that their favorite celebrities, for whatever reason that they have achieved a measure of celebrity, that they want to meet their favorite celebrities. And I've always been a little apprehensive about the idea of meeting some of these celebrities. So, for example, many of you don't know this, but I'm a Prince fan. I am a huge Prince fan. I am a gigantic Prince fan. I have no desire to meet Prince because I'm sure Prince will mess it up. Like, something's going to happen and it'll interfere with my ability to, like, love Prince the way that I do right now. Like, nah. I don't think I could do that. Like, Van Morrison is one of my favorite singers. I went last month to see Van Morrison in concert, and I've never seen any performer who cared less about his audience than Van Morrison did. He ain't look at us or nothing like that. Like, he just didn't care, right? If I met Van Morrison, it would ruin everything. That's how I would feel about, like, meeting Michael Jordan. But people keep hanging out with Michael Jordan, and Michael Jordan treat them bad, and they come back to get treated bad some more by Michael Jordan. But Michael Jordan would have had Chris Paul crying by the end of that trip, talking about how he ain't got no rings.
Bomani.
It appears that Jason Pierre-Paul had a finger amputated. There is no delicate way to spring that news upon you if you did not know it. ESPN's Adam Schefter reported this, and, well, let's just say I can tell you with a relative level of certainty that he did, in fact, have a finger amputated. Now, of note, apparently he'll be able to play. He'll be set up. He'll be ready to play in 2015 sooner than people think or what the reports are. And by the way, we're not talking about like a pinky. We're talking about the index finger. And, like, I don't know about you, but I have a difficult time imagining life without my index finger, and I imagine that pointing at people becomes really awkward. I mean, it's kind of unavoidable. Think of all the things you use your index finger for. Now think about what finger you got to use instead. Like, that's not something I'd want. I feel bad for the dude. Like, even if the dude is able to play, like, 10 fingers. That's what's up. 9 fingers. I mean, if it's what you got to do, right? Anyway, here's something that I find to be interesting about this. The Giants have said that they were unaware of the fact that Jason Pierre-Paul had his finger amputated, and the Giants say that they were unaware that he had his finger amputated, basically because they sent Jesse Armstead, who works for him and used to play for him and who played college football in Miami. He's from Texas, though. But anyway, they sent him down to Miami, and he was supposed to see Jason Pierre-Paul, and he could not get in to visit Jason Pierre-Paul. Everybody was keeping him out. And, you know, it's not like in the hospital they just going to be like, oh, yeah, just go, look around, see if you can find him. No, they weren't letting him in. And I imagine, whereas right now we are questioning whether DeAndre Jordan is really being held hostage or whether or not he just doesn't want to meet up with the Mavericks, in this situation, I imagine that there were some people in that waiting room making damn sure nobody got to see Jason Pierre-Paul. And let me tell you, I imagine that some of those dudes, they were doing that kind of security work pro bono. And you know why? Because people love nothing more than the opportunity to deliver a beatdown that they believe they are justified in delivering. All right? So the Giants sent Jesse Armstead down on Monday, and the word we got today was that the Giants had given up, and they'd sent people back, right? They'd given up. They weren't going to find out what was going on with Jason Pierre-Paul, so they decided to come back. Hey, man, am I the only person that has a difficult time believing that? Here's the reason why I have a difficult time believing that. I have a difficult time believing that because I don't feel like when rich people put you on a plane and tell you to go get some information that you just call them up and say, they won't let me in. Like it just stops there? They wouldn't let me in. That's it? Really? I don't feel like that's how it worked. Keep it in mind, by the way, that the Giants sent the trainer and they sent Jesse Armstead to Miami, and apparently neither one of them talked to Jason Pierre-Paul before they came down. They just showed up. So you're telling me that they just showed up, but they gonna leave without what they came for? Oh, okay, I guess. Because I'm not going to lie to you. If I was worth $1 billion and I was trying to make a $14 million decision on Jason Pierre-Paul, if I send some people down there to get some information, y'all coming back with some information. Y'all might come back with something that isn't even true, but y'all coming back with some information. Like, somebody's going to let me know what the deal is with this dude's finger. Because I don't know about you, but I don't feel like the Giants went down there for Jason Pierre-Paul. The Giants went down there for the Giants, right? The Giants went down there to serve the interest of the Giants. You ain't just giving up, all right? Like, I work in the journalism business. If they send somebody down there to find out what happened to Jason Pierre-Paul's finger, you ain't calling your editor back and just saying, dude, what can I tell you? They wouldn't let me in. What can I say? That doesn't work. Just so you know, that doesn't work. What can I mean? Hey, what can I say, man? It's a hospital, man. They got security. Couldn't make it. Sorry. No. That's not how that goes. But that's what the Giants say happened. Okay. Like, you got the nicest billionaire boss ever that's out here mining for information. Good for you guys. So they head back, and now we find out that Jason Pierre-Paul has had a finger removed. Let me get back to that part one more time. A finger removed, an index finger removed. Like, I think that we are numb, generally speaking, to the things that athletes do or willing to do or whatever, right? So Ronnie Lott, for example, willing to have his finger amputated so that he could keep on playing football. I can't imagine being in a situation where I have to sit up and ask myself, so how much is this finger really worth? Like, ask yourself that question right now. Look at your index finger on your right hand. If you're right-handed especially, look at the index finger on your right hand. How much money is that index finger worth to you? So say the doctors tell Jason Pierre-Paul, the only way that you'll ever be able to play football again is if we cut off your index finger. Is your index finger worth $14 million? And I'm not going to lie to you. There's a good chance my index finger is worth $14 million. There's a distinct possibility my index finger is worth $1.4 million. I think it's worth more than $14,000. But $1.4 million or $14 million, yo, that's a dilemma. And that's life as a professional athlete right there. So I could, try to keep the finger and not play football, or I could cut it off and get $14 million. Yep, I'm going for the 14. Like we joke about an arm and a leg and that kind of stuff. The NFL allows you to place a reasonable estimate on what the dollar value is of someone's finger. And that just happened. Someone's finger. By the way, back to the Jesse Armstead point. Jesse Armstead apparently is buddies with Jason Pierre-Paul. I was going to pick on the Giants for that, by the way. We hear all this stuff about NFL security and how they can track anybody down and anything else. And I'm like, man, y'all couldn't get in with Jason Pierre-Paul? Then it was like, oh, yeah, duh. He's in a hospital. Well, we all know now what's going on with him. We all know clearly what's going on with him. I just want to know how in the world the Giants just decide, no, we're not paying for another night in a hotel. You guys have to come back.
Bomani.
This just came across the Twitter. You guys ready for this? Sources. Cuban is beside himself, driving around downtown Dallas begging through text Jordan's family for the address to DeAndre's home. What? Come on, man. Don't do that. If you're doing that, don't do that. Don't do that. Just go check the property tax records. That's all you got to do. It's on the internet. You can go find this sort of thing. But, Mark Cuban, I would like to remind you, you are still in Texas. I don't think you just need to show up at that man's house. If you are not there, I don't think you need to show up at that man's house. I grew up in Houston, as I've told many of you, and I'm just here to let you know, you don't need to show up at that man's house. That's it. 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. So have you seen this where J.J. Watt has beef with Zach Mettenberger? Now, first of all, let's just stop and consider the fact that Zach Mettenberger, who might not even be on the Titans roster on opening day, well, the two of those guys have some beef. You may recall this, that J.J. Watt, apparently, he took some kind of umbrage with Zach Mettenberger taking selfies. So when he got a sack against Zach Mettenberger, he stopped and did a selfie thing over him. And Zach Mettenberger apparently has an interview, and he said about J.J. Watt that J.J. Watt thought that Mettenberger and his selfie obsession is childish. And Mettenberger said he heard that J.J. Watt rags on him on Instagram whenever he takes a selfie. I don't know. Anyway, J.J. Watt then came behind it with something about the lion. That on Twitter was something about how a lion don't worry about sheep and da-da-da and everything else. And guys, I want everybody to think about this for a second, okay? Please don't ruin J.J. Watt by talking about how hard he works all the time to the point where he actually believes that he is what stands for everything that's right about the NFL. Okay? Because it's happened. It has happened. I worked in North Carolina in the Triangle when Tyler Hansbrough was in college. And I remember once I said this about Hansbrough, and I did something about Tim Tebow with this once also, where I was like, look, man, could y'all please not go so crazy and over the top with all these cliches about these guys? And the reason I say that is, like, you take dudes who really hadn't done anything to anybody, and you wind up making them really, really annoying. So with Hansbrough, I thought Hansbrough was a fascinating basketball player, and Hansbrough certainly worked really, really hard, right? He really worked hard. He just wasn't the only person out there who worked hard. Like, everybody pretty much was out there working hard. He was just better than most of them. But then it just got to be so absolutely annoying. But luckily, Hansbrough seems to be some variety of insane, and I don't even think he noticed or paid any attention to that stuff. That's just how he was. Now, with J.J. Watt, you remember when the Texans took Clowney? And the questions were there about Clowney's work ethic, which I've never gotten into, but people have gotten into, well, his work ethic. And the thing I heard people say over and over again about his work ethic was, well, he'll have J.J. Watt there, and J.J. Watt wouldn't tolerate that sort of behavior. Like, J.J. Watt was going to be the law and order because J.J. Watt is the portrait of all things hardworking. J.J. Watt is a freakish athlete. Like, I'm not getting into or doing too much of an estimation of how hard J.J. Watt does or does not work. I'm just telling you, with the level of athleticism that he has, if he didn't want to work as hard as everybody else, it could still work out okay, right? But it seems like now, like, Watt, when you present the dude like that, as if he's the guy that's everything that's right, he winds up being the dude fussing at other people for taking selfies. And why do you want to be that? Like, who wants to be that guy? Who wants to be the hall monitor? And that's almost what it feels like J.J. Watt is becoming. You're 26 years old, bruh. You're way too young to be that guy. Like, what's he going to be when he's 35? Oh, man. No. It doesn't have to. I would like to send a shout-out, though, by the way, to somebody at ESPN.com. I don't even know who it is at ESPN.com that I'm sending that shout-out to. But whoever wrote the headline, J.J. Watt offers aphorism in a reply to Zach Mettenberger's latest dig. Whoever up there was like, yo, put aphorism in that headline, you are the real MVP. Because you are giving the rest of us way more credit than we deserve. Because I sure as hell had to look that one up. 888-729-3776. Let's talk to Kevin in Milwaukee. Kevin, thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't get what DeAndre Jordan is doing in the 25th hour. I totally get it on a personal level. You've been in L.A. for your whole career. You've got personal ties to your teammates. You've got conflicting opinions. But Dallas gave you the pitch to get you to leave. They said they were going to pretty much build the team around you. And I don't care what the Clippers are saying right now. There is no way that they are going to change their offensive philosophy as long as Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are in town, and as long as they're pretty much one half away from the Western Conference semis.
Now, I think there's something to that, and I don't know exactly what happened, and I appreciate the call. The one thing I'll say, and I ask everybody to consider on DeAndre Jordan, man, is that he's the one that's got to live with whatever the ultimate decision is, right? So if it happens at this point and he decides right at the end that he's going to change his mind, I'm not about to be unhappy for the next 4 years so you can say I stuck to my word, right? Sometimes these things break bad, man. Sometimes somebody's got to lose. But if the options are me losing or you losing, chances are you about to lose. Like, if I'm the one that gets to decide, chances are you're going to be the one who loses. Hey, man, one important part about being an adult is understanding people being upset with you.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Bomani.
I don't know what exactly has given DeAndre Jordan this great feeling of regret necessarily, but I think the angle that we need to discuss here is the fact that the Clippers felt the need to do this without his agent there. And DeAndre Jordan seems to be okay with that. Okay? How do you get to that point? That's the question that I think is way more interesting than anything else. How do you get to that point? Like, that's what I want to know. Now, by the way, Adrian Wojnarowski says that DeAndre Jordan needs an agent certification on contract. It's invalid without it. The agents are expected to join the Clippers and DeAndre Jordan in the house. Bruh, I would love to hear the conversation. Love to hear the conversation between DeAndre Jordan and his agent when his agent gets to the house. Because he's not there right now. Right. So I guess DeAndre Jordan has to give the dude the 4% because he's got to sign the paperwork. By the way, Adrian Wojnarowski also says that the Clippers and DeAndre Jordan had a meeting that was short and said it was clear he was returning to them, and then they started playing cards. My question about them playing cards, are they allowing Chris Paul to play cards with DeAndre Jordan? Because I don't know about you, but I could see very easily how quickly that could go off the rails. Very, very quickly. Like, I think in a situation like that, so Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan, let's just say they're in the house, they playing spades, they just killing the time till midnight comes around, right? So let's just say that happens. If you're the Clippers, do you want to make sure that Chris Paul is on the same team as DeAndre Jordan or is on the opposite team as DeAndre Jordan? Because, see, there's pluses and minuses to both sides of this if you'll indulge me for just a second, all right? If you have DeAndre Jordan and Chris Paul on the same team, they can get into that good teamwork spirit now and just, this is a way of us coming together. They on the same team, right? But if they bid 8 and Chris Paul says he has 3 and DeAndre Jordan only pulls in 4, what's Chris Paul going to do? When they bump heads and Chris Paul got to book 1 with that ace of spades, and here comes DeAndre with the deuce, and then he leads off the next hand with something like the 3 of diamonds, what's going to happen then? Think about how many friendships that you've seen be in danger because somebody played the wrong thing in the spades game. No. You can't have them on the same team. At the same time, you can't have them on opposite teams because the next thing you know, Chris Paul talking about, man, DeAndre don't know how to bid. Oh, come on. You going to let DeAndre tell you he got 4? You know he ain't got 4. You know he ain't got 4. He can't even tell a club from a spade. Remember that time that he messed up the whole game because he thought he had one more spade than he did, but it was really a club? Y'all remember that? Yeah, y'all reneged and lost those 3 books. Y'all remember that? Looking over at DeAndre Jordan. Because Chris Paul isn't the type of competitive that can stop being competitive. Like, yeah, the future of the franchise is on the line. Chris Paul is not the sort of competitive that can just stop being competitive just because a franchise center is hanging in the balance. Nah. When y'all start playing cards, you got to start going through all the different games. Like, you know how to play spades? Chris Paul, yeah, I know how to play spades. You know how to play hearts? Yeah, I know how to play hearts. You know how to play bid whist? Yeah, I know how to play bid whist. Damn. You know how to play solitaire? Cool. We got 2 decks of cards. So, like, yeah. I'm going to just go over here and play solitaire. You can do the same thing if you want. Like, that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. You cannot let Chris Paul blow this at the 11th hour. You just can't. It cannot be that. 888-729-3776 is the telephone number. Let's talk to Sashi in North Carolina. Thanks for calling the right time.
Hey, what's up, Bomani? First of all, I am a Carolina student, so shout out to you. The other thing was just this whole situation, man. I'm a diehard Mavs fan, and this has been absolutely the most Bush League thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, locking Mark Cuban and Chandler Parsons out of your house after they spend hours of their time, you know, getting to know you and your family, and Blake Griffin's out here tweeting on Twitter with chairs and whatnot, and it's just like, you know, how old are you, you know? And it's like, at the end of the day, you got to be happy that, you're somewhat happy that you missed out on DJ, because you can clearly see the character of him and what he's like, and, you know.
Hey, well, hold on, let me ask you a question right fast. How old are you?
I am 19 right now, actually.
All right, let me just tell you this. This is some advice coming from me to you. Be very careful talking about what you see about a man's character that you don't know. Because here's the thing you got to remember about this. One, his agent and Mark Cuban have their own relationship that raised some questions as to how exactly this wound up happening. There's a complexity to this that you got to remember. Now, the Blake Griffin stuff with like the pictures and stuff, I could understand being upset about. But one day may come for you, because I can tell you it has happened to me where you got the contract in your hand. All you have left to do is to actually sign the contract. But, man, when real life interferes and you're the one that's got to live those next 4 or 5 years, sometimes it's just what it's got to be. So I appreciate the call, but I would be very careful if I was any of you guys to getting too deep into talking about what kind of man DeAndre Jordan is. Now, I would agree with people who would say that if this is what he's going to do, that he needs to be able to face Mark Cuban and tell him what the deal is. I agree with that. Now, I admit that when I was in a similar situation, my agent wound up handling that sort of thing, but my agent handled all that stuff. Right? I do get your point. If you think he needs to talk to Mark Cuban, I understand where you're coming from when you say he needs to talk to Mark Cuban. However, the decision that he wants to stay with the Clippers, if that's what it is, then that's what it is. Like, that's it. And if they're mad, they're mad. And I totally get it if they wind up being mad. But sometimes people just have to be mad. And I tell you wind up in a situation like that yourself, I have a feeling you'll evaluate it a little bit differently. Like, be careful being but so judgmental of this dude in a situation that, well, you haven't quite been in. This is a little bit tricky, right? So, if he's happy, fantastic for him. I also readily admit, I close my eyes and imagine how mad Mark Cuban is right now, and it is one of the 5 funniest things I have ever been able to envision. Good gracious. Whew.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Weeknights from 9 to 11 Eastern or on demand at ESPNradio.com.